just need you. Can you just do a song for me, man? Listen, don't make me beg, man. Can you just, please, man, just do a song. Please. Thank you, bro.
Nigga, my heart broken. Remember, I was rich, so I bought me some new emotions and a new boat, cause I'd rather cry in the ocean. It's tea, baby.
Woo. That's what I'm talking about, boy.
Probably cause that motherfucking embryo was morphine into a Grammy-winning schizophrenic fucking orphan. Nobody could fulfill me like this music shit does, so I'll be lonely with these Grammys when it's all said and done. Come on.
I've never felt like someone who really fits in anywhere. And I don't mean that in a sense of I'm not liked, like I can't find a place to sit in the lunchroom. It's a much deeper feeling of isolation where you sit with people who are supposed to be the ones who care about you the most, and yet you feel like they don't actually know you. Throughout my life, all the groups I've been a part of, the relationships I've made, the people who matter the most to me, it's rare that I ever felt truly known or seen. And I think that's common. A great writer talks about the shared loneliness of the soul that all humans are plagued with, a shared feeling that nobody really cares about you. It makes us think we need to have merit and value in order to earn love, that we need to be interesting to be appreciated. Tyler, the Creator, has always been there for me in those moments. Not just that I feel like he's someone who thinks the same way, but he rose above that struggle and has proven to everybody just how much value he really has. He proved everyone who doubted him wrong, and listening to his music, I want to do the same. I want to work harder. I want to achieve so that I can earn that love from others. And yet the more I do that, the more I look to Tyler when I'm met with more of a disconnect to others. And so maybe we feel different from others, not because we don't have enough merit, but because we're too focused on earning our value rather than allowing others to show us how much we already have. I don't know. I don't think that's the direction I want to go with. I got to get back to work on this video so people will think I'm smart.
I always had confidence. I ain't never been nervous. I ain't never had anxiety. I ain't never second guessed myself. If I want it, I go get it. I'm always on go mode. I just go. I don't know what fear is.
Mask on the babies, mask on the op, wear mask in the neighborhood stores you shop, but a mask won't hide who you are inside.
We got to cut the bull. Just start being super open and honest.
Yeah, be human.
And that's what Kendrick just did with his new album.
Yep.
And a lot of people, I think, I mean, they probably just don't like the music. I love that album. But I feel like he touches on that's so, like, open and honest that some people can't listen to it because they probably feel like he's looking at them in their eyes and they're like, oh, I can't panic. I can't listen to this. Put on something else so I can hit my Dougie.
Numb it, yeah.
And keep forgetting and like numbing it that he's talking about. And not saying the people that's doing that went through what he's saying, but it's making them think about the that they're covering up.
2 years ago, right in the middle of a point where Tyler was somewhat absent from the public eye, he was on the tail end of the Call Me If You Get Lost era. He had kind of gone radio silent, only releasing clothing lines at this point. Kendrick Lamar comes out with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Tyler spoke out about how the album impacted him and even appeared in a Kendrick music video. And this was surprising considering him and Kendrick weren't super connected up until this point. And I look at this now and I think he related to Kendrick's internal struggle. His need to make music for others instead of himself. The pressure to be somebody that saves everyone else's world while his crashes down. And I think he was inspired by Kendrick's commitment to once and for all make an album that meant the world to him, even if it wasn't universally applicable to everyone else. And so now we're at CHROMAKOPIA and we have this new paranoid character, and I can't help but think, is this Tyler's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers? I mean, it can't be. This is a new Tyler universe, right? He doesn't make albums like that. It's always a story. He's not that personal. That's why I get excited for Tyler albums. I might feel lonely, but his music makes me feel alive. He's an individual. He's not bothered. Tyler's here to bring us back, right? I mean, he's always been one of the guys with the answers. These characters saved my life. Igor, Sir Baudelaire, hell, even Goblin, they all kept me sane. What is the character? Suddenly, on October 16th, 2024, Tyler breaks his somewhat silence with a teaser for the introduction to his new era, Saint Chroma. It has all the features of his previous rollouts, but he's in a new outfit, and the song's militaristic head rush of an atmosphere is new for him. There's clearly a new aesthetic here, and yet it still feels different. If you turn your attention to Genius, it speaks of Saint Chroma as the introduction to the album's character. It says, Saint Chroma marks a new era of Tyler, acting as CHROMAKOPIA's introduction. It formally introduces the album's masked central character, Saint Chroma, who's featured on the front cover. The character reflects a freer side of Tyler, both artistically and mentally. However, as CHROMAKOPIA progresses, the ultimately paranoid man behind the mask comes to light. And I've read this over and over again, and I'm not so sure I accept this premise. This new world he's presenting, it's not as whimsical or clearly an alternate universe like his other eras. And wait, when was even the last time we got a glimpse of the Tyler universe?
Sorry, not sorry. I got 2 words. Fuck 'em.
This video we knew would be significant. There were theories and claims all over the internet about what Tyler's symbolic murdering of Sir Baudelaire meant, but now it's clear. Sorry Not Sorry is a song that rejects vulnerability, that denies accountability. It's a track that embraces Tyler's most well-defined characteristics. He's endlessly confident, indescribably individualistic, and admittedly a bit self-righteous. Tyler will always do Tyler, and to anyone who disagrees, he's got 2 middle fingers for you. But the video seems to be a juxtaposition of this mindset. Tyler's current self is bare and dressed down. He seems to be paranoid and haunted by all of his old eras which lurk in the background. The end of the video where he murders Sir Baudelaire is an absolute rejection of everything that's built Tyler's fame, his platform, everything we know about him. And that's because all of these eras represent lies. These characters are all just a fantasized version of Tyler that he potentially wishes existed, but it didn't actually represent where he was at the time. By moving on from his past and embracing this new Saint Chroma idea, Tyler commits to a journey, a long road that leads to something greater than any of these characters could accomplish. This isn't a new fable representing an era. This character represents all of Tyler, the most bare version of who he has been as long as we've known him. Saint Chroma encapsulates all of these characters. He's the one who pulled all the strings that made them happen. He's the one who led to their existence. Saint Chroma is the most honest version of the facade that hides the real Tyler, the Creator. So in some sense, we're introduced to a character, sure. But the character is, as opposed to all of Tyler's other albums, a means of obstructing us from seeing who Tyler really is, not the key to accessing him. What began this journey is a realization that Tyler's failed to truly be himself. Embarrassed, he retreated, leading to this period of silence we've had for the past year. But he can't stay hidden forever. And so he's back, but not fully as himself. But perhaps maybe to us, this masked military man is the realest version of him that we've ever seen. What we do know is that it's not what lies underneath. It's simply the thin veil being revealed as what it is. And so something we have to hold on to when we analyze this album is that I don't think he's playing a character. For maybe the first time in his career, Tyler's writing an album about Tyler. Not Goblin, not Igor, not a glamorized, lush, rich man that he was on Call Me If You Get Lost. I think he's trying to strip all that off. He's not communicating his story through a parable or some abstract fable that's representative of what he went through rather than actually talking about what he went through. The album's very concept is an effort to finally move past the fantasy and play himself. The character is ultimately how Tyler has come to see his public persona throughout his life. A shell, an ever-evolving wall shielding himself from the people who love him. Even the branding for the album is representative of this. The black and white colors, the bare, somewhat haunting mask he's wearing, the military aesthetic of the music videos and the music. He's going through a process that is breaking him down into nothing so that he can be built back up into something better. And yet he's petrified, even hopeless in some senses, that he won't get to do this on his terms, that all of this has caught up with him, that the crazy people will reveal him for who he truly is. I guess what I'm trying to say is He's paranoid. Noid is one of the greatest musical experiences in Tyler's discography. It's an absolute journey of a song, but it's also a completely new take on fame in Tyler's mind. And yes, I've seen the videos. I know he talks about not wanting people to come take pictures with him all the time. But to say that this is the meaning of the song is really doing a disservice to how big of a contrast this is for him. He's always embraced his fame. Well, maybe not necessarily that, but he's embraced relevance. Influence, importance, that's important to him. And he's talked about being frustrated about the things that come with it. I mean, on the song Colossus, he vents about people bothering him at Six Flags, but he's never illustrated it like this. The song depicts a schizophrenic recluse who is scared of the people he's given everything to influence hurting him. And I think this is a recognition of the darker side of fame, an illustration of what it's like to be a celebrity. Anything can happen to you at any moment, but this isn't a side of his popularity that's new at all for Tyler. He should be well acquainted with that by now. It's a cover-up for something more relevant haunting him. That is to say that the paranoia he's describing on this track is intentionally shallow and simple. The paranoia itself is a mask. And so there's something deeper haunting him, something more significant causing this paranoia. It's something we don't know quite yet. Yes, something Tyler's done, a choice maybe, but he refuses to show us. He's got that mask on. And the paranoia comes partly from the fame, sure, but more relevantly, it's a built-up fear that everyone is going to find out what he did and who he truly is. There's a certain hollowing of the soul that takes place when you can't present yourself fully to the people around you. It's a sense of mistrust that seeps into your psyche. Your decision-making becomes completely predicated on maintaining the story that you're putting out to everybody and making sure that you don't show them the real you so that they continue to think the way you want them to think about you. We've all done that, and it's a horrible way to live life. And so now imagine having to do that to millions and millions of people. Darling I is my favorite song on this album. An R&B jam is completely different for Tyler, but of course he does it perfectly. And the premise of the song is backwards. I mean, it's about the struggles of loving people. That forever is too long refrain is really important. Of course, he's saying that he can't commit to somebody because he can't give them his love forever, which is sad. But the temptation here is to think about this line as an I don't have the capacity to love someone statement, when in reality, I think it's the opposite, as if he's saying I don't have the capacity to be loved.
I don't own you. It's not fair just to be stuck with me.
Tyler takes a stance on the track that he feels like a monogamous commitment isn't real love, and that holding others back from experiences and getting to be with others or doing things with others is a disservice to the person you love the most. And so being tied down to one person is, in his mind, the opposite of love. But I hear this and I just wonder, is this a statement or is it a mask? I mean, think about all of Tyler's albums, pretty much since Wolf. They're all love stories. Yes, they're mostly twisted and abstract and have tons of other songs mixed in, but the story Tyler tells on every single album is a tragic love story. A failed relationship where he almost had it and then he didn't. It just seems to somehow, some way never work out. He's got a problem. And despite all this talk about moving from one lover to the other and how he thinks it's best to move from person to person, it seems like his entire life he's just been trying to find one that will satisfy him, and every single time he is the problem. He is the reason it doesn't work out. Tyler doesn't even know who he is. He's just a mask, a shell. How can he love someone forever if he doesn't even know how to love himself? This album, musically, isn't as ambitious as a lot of Tyler's other ones. Almost all the sounds, the compositional elements, the overall sonic landscape is composed of most of his typical music palette at this point. Unlike almost every other album he's released in the last decade, he's not going for a completely new artistic direction. And that's not to say it isn't great. It is. It's just not a risk for him. See, there's always risk involved with a Tyler album, something to keep the listeners on their toes, some facet of the project that Tyler has engineered knowing people with small minds won't be able to appreciate it. It's part of his self-proclaimed revolutionary shtick, I guess. In fact, Fantano just released his review a few minutes before I recorded this, and he criticized Tyler for not developing his sound more. And on this project, the risk isn't in the stylistic direction or the aesthetic elements. All of the musical endeavors on this project are tried and true. It's clear he didn't spend time worrying about how to present the sound. The risk is in how personal he's finally being. See, being vulnerable is one of the hardest things to do. It leaves us open to failure, to rejection, to social suicide, in worst cases. You give up power to the people you've chosen to let your guard down to, and Tyler's doing it on a worldwide scale when he releases music. But the difference is, usually Tyler is being vulnerable with a catch, or maybe a filter, because it's always through these characters or fantasies. But as we've already covered, this album steps away from that. The stories being told here are like diary entries about Tyler's deepest thoughts and struggles and regrets. He's finally being outward about something that's pervaded his entire public persona, and that's insecurity. Insecurity is, in my opinion, one of Tyler's most defining traits since we've known him as a celebrity. Some may think the opposite. He's one of the most confident people there are, and while in some ways I think that's true, especially in recent years, the undercurrent of lacking a strong sense of self has been the only consistent thread throughout his projects. Think about his Odd Future days where he was loud and an internet troll, and he said homophobic slurs even though we know he himself wasn't straight. I think this line off of Flower Boy explains this phenomenon well.
They say the loudest in the room is weak, that's what they assume, but I disagree. I say the loudest in the room is probably the loneliest one in the room.
And so you may say, okay, well he was insecure there, but he changed. Well, Flower Boy itself was an album that wrestled with this part of himself relentlessly, not knowing who to trust, not feeling welcome to his friends as a musician, not thinking he'll become who he wants to be. It's all just rooted in a lack of security in who he is and wants to be. And then Igor is an album that exists because of that same thing, feeling unloved and unwanted by the ones he loves, stuck in a never-ending cycle of falling in and out of infatuation with people and ultimately being controlled by his inability to break away from their grasp. This all comes to a head in Call Me If You Get Lost, where Tyler builds the entire Sir Baudelaire character as a literary vessel to depict the idea that he's acting as if his money and fame has turned him into one of the happiest people alive. And yet all he can think about is how nothing he's ever achieved matters when he's not loved by the people he loves the most. And so now we're here. Despite Tyler's strong voice, his clear-cut opinions and public statements, his palpable influence on current music, he's always just been a scared, growing young adult, running away from the truest version of himself to put something out that will distract us from his journey to finally release his inability to just be comfortable as Tyler. And so is there a risk with this album? Of course. He's finally admitting to how much of a mask he's always worn. And he's trying to build up the courage to take it off. He'll either succeed and finally conquer insecurity, or he'll fail and retreat into whatever character this CHROMAKOPIA figure is. So yes, this point is about insecurities, but Tyler never knew what he wanted from his career and his life, and that's where it comes from. I think throughout this project, conquering insecurity manifests itself in finding out what he does want.
Nobody could fulfill me like this music shit does, so I'll be lonely with these Grammys when it's all said and done. Come on.
Do what the fuck you want. Do what the fuck you want. So if he gets on a label and now you want to put out some water,
he said that, but he also said he going Grammys too. Has he not?
I don't know if he was serious about that.
Come on, man. How the fuck you gonna say that?
From the moment Tyler became famous, his goal with music was one thing. He wanted to be a Grammy winner. Now, at the time, this was indescribably far-fetched. The horrorcore Tyler made was never going to get him there. But look at him now. He's a multi-Grammy winner, and he undebatably earned them. And yet, it's almost as if he's in a more scatterbrained place mentally than he was at that point. See, the Grammy winning wasn't for Tyler. It was for everybody else. He needed to prove how great he was. He needed everyone to see that he could prove them wrong. It was all predicated on insecurity. And we've all done that, you know? We've all felt unloved, unwanted, underlooked for what we think we can offer. And that motivates us. We push ourselves further than we could ever imagine to run away from that failure. But fear can make you run from what you're scared of, but it'll never motivate you to run towards what's really important. In other words, it'll get you out of bed, but it won't get you to finish the race. And so now Tyler won. He accomplished a dream, and yet his endeavors kept him from finding someone to love. His heaven became his jail cell, all because he hid behind a mask. This is one of the most important moments of Tyler's career. It's him backtracking on everything he ever said he wanted, and yet at the same time, it's a breakthrough that can't be understated. It's that breakthrough that allows us to tackle the real problem at hand.
Always, always, always wear a condom. Don't trust it.
Hey Jane, we got the news and I didn't know what to do. I didn't panic, I was comforting you.
Hey Jane reveals the conflict that the entire album hinges on, a moment which shattered Tyler's entire world, causing him to take a step back and realize all that has led him to arguably his biggest failure, a pregnancy scare. This track, more than almost any other song, is reminiscent of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in my opinion. The low-key instrumental, the rushed, somber, deadpan rapping is almost exactly like Mother I Sober. It's Tyler's own confession song. Tyler writes 2 verses that illustrate the perspective of himself and the Jane character that he's involved with, and how they reacted to hearing the news. There's no thematic breakdown here, it's just a heartbreaking spill of one of the hardest moments of his life, clearly, and yet the way he reacts to it is with such maturity. The verse essentially says in more or less words, "I'm not ready to have this baby, our families want us to, we could raise it, but you're the victim here, and you're the one who has to deal with the consequences of a decision we both made. I'm sorry." And Jane's response is equally as sad, but still inspiring. She talks about being scared, petrified of what others will think, not feeling ready, and yet absolutely confident she could raise it by herself. But she doesn't think she needs Tyler. In fact, it almost sounds like she doesn't want him to be the father. She says, "I can do it alone. My mom did it, your mom did it. It's not a pride thing, it's more of a I need peace of mind thing." And I don't know what's worse, deciding whether you want to tackle a newborn child not confident in your abilities to be a good father, or dealing with your child being raised by your partner alone because she doesn't trust in your abilities to be one.
I gotta work, I gotta eat. If they see you on top of me, I gotta leave, bitch, I killed you.
I Killed You is about hair. This is a conversation I don't feel fully comfortable delving into. I'm not black, but I can talk about what Tyler says about it. There's multiple layers here. He talks about how something as simple as hair is an obstacle for people who look like him to truly be themselves, as there's a narrow-minded few things that are accepted as hairstyles, and anything outside of the box essentially results in you being placed outside of your heritage. So instead of dealing with the pressure, a lot of times the best thing to do is kill it. But the song is placed in the track list expertly in a way that gives it deeper and broader implications as well to the larger theme at hand. Because Tyler has done his own fair share of killing inside of his psyche. We discussed the Sorry Not Sorry video where he murders all of his previous public personas, so while Tyler is clearly passionate about commenting on the social phenomenon, I think he's decided to kill a part of himself that fell victim to the same things that people who succumb to peer pressure on their haircut do. He spent forever worrying about what others would think and hiding his true self from them. He's created these portraits of himself that don't really mean anything, that don't represent him fully. He's finally learned that this is bowing to insecurity. So instead of bowing to others, he kills something, a part of himself that isn't fully authentic. And in this turning point, he hopefully becomes something better.
I met this girl named Judy at the cafe on my way.
I think it'd be hard to find a song as much of a departure from all of Tyler's stylistic cornerstones as Judge Judy. There's something about it, maybe how it's presented, that reminds me heavily of Prince. It's hard to put my finger on it. Maybe it's as simple as the suave, linear, kind of squeaky vocal delivery that he employs to tell the story. And the whole departure thing doesn't stop there. The song is delivered in such an innocent tone. There's a lack of conviction, I guess. It's simple. Tyler meets a woman at a cafe, they connect, and they do things together. Now, what's interesting about this is that Tyler, throughout the story, actively resists a temptation he discussed about judging Judy. The chorus is always led into by something questionable that she does, and Tyler acknowledging that he's not so sure about it, but he won't judge her for it. And this is something, well, completely off base for him. If there's one thing that's always been true about Tyler, it's that he sees the world his way and people who are in opposition of him are lesser. It's a sentiment that seeps through all his albums, interviews, his tweets. Tyler's always felt that it's his responsibility to stand for something better. And yet, even deeper than this, why would he feel a desire to condemn someone for what they're doing? Is this not more or less the same exact behavior Tyler advocated for in Darling I? Think about it, this vision of experiencing different things with different people, giving love and being loved by lots of different people, a more flamboyant lifestyle where you're chasing a rush with someone who can give you something that your other lover can't. He was pretty clear about that. And so, is this an illustration of hypocrisy or growth? It's hard to answer that question. Or maybe this is the first step in being comfortable with himself.
And when you're not afraid to be yourself, you're comfortable. It's like a web or an umbrella. When you're not afraid to be you, you're comfortable. When you're comfortable with yourself, you don't have that much hate in your heart, and you're not that quick to judge. And when you're not that quick to judge, you're open to more things. When you're open to more things, you're not ignorant. And when you're not ignorant, racism doesn't exist.
This was Tyler's perspective on judgment in 2015 when he released Cherry Bomb. And I think even just at face value, this is remarkably wise. But I'd argue that Tyler's resistance to not judge Judy is a step much further and deeper than the perspective he illustrated there. See, Tyler found himself on the other end of the behavior that he himself propagated throughout his career, especially recently. Call Me If You Get Lost was an ode to adventure, getting any car you want, any trip you want, any person you want. Aside from the love story bit, it was a celebration of excess in a lot of ways. On the song Dogtooth, he talks about something he quotes on this song, where he says that who his lover has sex with besides him isn't his concern, which is a standpoint he seems to be sticking to. Real love isn't full, single-handed commitment. It's much more adventurous than that. And yet in this song, he seems uncomfortable with being on the receiving end of this mindset. He sees the downside, the shallowness of it. And so I think that to not judge Judy is a step towards being comfortable with oneself, to conquer deeply rooted insecurity, to decide that their bad behavior is only a reflection of you if you let it be. In other words, you learn how to not judge others when you're humbled. When you have moments in your life where you've failed greatly and you needed others to forgive you. When you realize that you're just another person trying to figure it out. There's an old story about a father who was depressed and suicidal because of an insecure pastor at their church. The pastor at the church yelled at the members, especially the men, telling them about how much they weren't doing good enough, how they weren't manly men, and that judgment ruined him. One day, while his son tried to console the father as he was drunk and off of his medicine, he asked if they could leave the church once and for all. The son, being completely enamored and obsessed with the mask the church allowed them to wear, said no. The father looked at him with a blank stare, and he said, "Our pastor is a harsh man. He doesn't understand mercy, and he doesn't understand mercy because he's never suffered." The father killed himself 3 months later. The song ends with a letter that Judy wrote Tyler telling him that she appreciated the time they had together, but also that she has cancer. By the time he read it, she's dead, and she didn't die because she wanted to. She lived her life to the absolute fullest because she wasn't judged, because she wasn't looked at as lesser than or somebody who has it all wrong. She was just taken at face value and loved for who she was. I don't know if Tyler is backtracking on his whole idea of love on the song or not. I think it's left ambiguous intentionally, and I'm grateful for that. More importantly, I think he learned when you live life to the fullest, when you're vulnerable, when you give up yourself to let others judge and condemn you, or to appreciate you as you are, there's truer life on the other side of it. Judy taught him that you have to take the mask off, or else. If you don't, you find yourself in a sticky situation. A situation where you're not ready to do something, but the threat looms and you retreat into your shell even more, running from responsibility that might crush you and you get what I mean. We have to become better and finally drop the facade.
Big guns, what you got, huh? Slat.
Take Your Mask Off is the album's mission statement, and it's a meta-commentary on Tyler himself, actually. We see Tyler's well-documented obsession with storytelling here, as the first 3 verses are about 3 different people controlled by their masks: a thug, a preacher, and a mother. He calls them to take their mask off and to be themselves, instead of trying to convince everyone else that they're something they're not. And yet verse 4 centers back on himself, Tyler, and the mask he wears. The first 3 verses are a distraction of sorts, an effort for Tyler to make this song about someone else, as he always does in his music, telling stories to impact his audience in a way that removes himself so he doesn't actually have to show us who he is. But it's time to be better than that. His old self is dead, and he needs to improve. And so the song is ironic. It's Tyler telling others to remove their masks when in reality, by making the track about them, he's refusing to take off his own. Verse 2 is one of Tyler's most direct commentaries on Christianity in his entire career, despite having said a litany of pretty derogatory stuff about the faith throughout the years. He tells the story about a preacher who was indoctrinated into hating gays and then became gay himself. It's convicting. It illustrates the hypocrisy of institutional religion well, but it's a bit out of place, no? There's certainly a few reasons why Tyler wrote the verse, but I think above all else, it touches on a part of life and culture that people usually consider the best way to take the mask off. Finding faith, finding God, discovering your true self through that. I don't think Tyler is saying don't be a Christian here, despite likely being an agnostic. I think it's more so included here as yet another road not traveled.
$10 million invested, no justifying that. Trying to sell them weird ass clothes, nobody buying that. Sentiment is right, but your audience isn't racked enough.
The final verse is hard to swallow. It's self-deprecating in a way that Tyler has never been before. It's a huge turning point, I think. The lines that close out his commentary seems to breathe something into the Tyler verse that we've never seen. Despite all the bravado, the confidence in his weird aesthetics, his self-proclaimed genius, he doubts that anyone thinks he's even a good designer, or artist, or person. The final line uses imagery of using fake tears to water his roots, indicating that Tyler is fueling his outward projection of himself with inauthenticity, and he needs to expose himself, or else.
Now go and stand in the sun and use them fake tears to water your roots.
I think there's really something there with this song that represents something we never really conquer when it comes to insecurity. When you're feeling lost, like you're not fully confident, it's hard to admit. It's a lot easier to just point at others. And you know that, right? But I think deeper than that, it's easy to hear a lesson or read a book or be told something about how we need to change or be better and then think, oh man, well, at least I'm not that guy. I think that's what Tyler's doing on this song. He's pointing things to others when in reality, he's the one who needs to change. He's the lost one. The question is there enough time for him to figure it out and find his way home? Tomorrow illuminates a thread that's been an undercurrent so far, but I think is acknowledged here, the idea of consequences, and that Tyler's choices are really just a series of trade-offs. Following Take Your Mask Off adds a lot of context to this. If Tomorrow were earlier in the track list, it would be fine as a standalone idea, but I think the song adds more nuance to the album's theme being placed here. Yes, vulnerability is probably something most people agree on as a mature thing to do and something we need to try to enact in our lives, but it's not something we just do and everything is perfect all of a sudden. It's, well, a leap of faith. It's like skydiving, where you hype yourself up to do it, you build up this insurmountable courage and finally get it done, and as soon as you step off that cliff, you're immediately reminded of all the scary things that kept you from doing it in the first place. On this track, Tyler wrestles with the consequences of either side of the decision he's spent the whole album trying to make. Either he goes through with it and has a child and he makes his mom happy, making his own life miserable in the process, or he continues to do what makes him happy at the risk of potentially never pleasing his people. I love the line where he says, "My mother's hands don't look the same, jet black strands turning gray." It's a somber illustration of the weight and urgency of these decisions, and yet Tyler feels unable to make them now, convincing himself to just wait until tomorrow. And yet the last line is yet another commitment to return to the album's purpose, as Tyler decides to finally take action and destroy his paranoia at heart by responding to the looming consequences instead of putting them off.
I'm too paranoid, so I'ma air it out. And any pressure that you putting on me, I'ma tear down. Niggas thought I was dead. These niggas thought I was dead.
I've spent a while speculating on what the intention behind this track is. It's really redundant and repetitive, especially in Tyler's discography. And that's certainly on purpose, but what is the purpose? And then I thought about the last few years and how much finality there was in Call Me If You Get Lost. Yes, hidden in the bravado, there was a heartbreaking love story, sure, but it was also a victory lap album. It was a flex that he had become so successful in spite of becoming famous from pure shock value when he was a kid. And after that album, he more or less dropped off from the music scene. It's been 3 years, and he even stopped staying on this one album every other year schedule. All he gave us were those Call Me If You Get Lost rejects, and he stopped posting on social media. It's like he was completely gone from the music scene in some way. I don't know how to explain it. And it's clear throughout this album that he's gone on a very personal journey to get here, that he's had to conquer crushing paranoia, heartbreak, his entire world crashing down. But the fans don't always understand that when you're gone. Thought I Was Dead is a simple statement. Tyler's back, he's not leaving, and he's got more to say. It's on us whether we listen or not.
Damn, nigga. Every time I look at you, I swear to God.
I would argue Like Him is one of the most important songs Tyler's ever made. You know, we talk about conquering insecurity, and that is maybe no more apparent than in the fact that Tyler releases a song where he's just singing. He's talked endlessly about how he hates his voice. In his mind, it's the thing that holds him back from being a great artist.
Honestly, I think I ruin songs. I hate my voice.
And yet, he's built up enough courage to put an actual ballad on his album. On top of this, the song brings to light the parallel between his two parents that Tyler's battling. It's almost as if he realizes that since he comes from them, he's bound to be like one. And despite these vocal clips of his mom throughout the entire album representing the echo in Tyler's head he's trying to listen to make decisions, it's as if he can't stop doing things that liken him to how he feels his dad would act. Sticky is a sarcastic acknowledgement of this, as Tyler talks about being in a sticky situation, and now Like Him provides a more serious window into how haunted he actually is. It's really easy to think this track is purely about Tyler's dad. I mean, sure, he's the subject and it's the reason the song exists, right? But it's not addressed to him in the same way that all of Tyler's previous endeavors to talk about it are. Let's look at arguably the prime example of this previously, Answer.
Hey dad, it's me, I'm Tyler. I think I be your son, sorry.
Answer is one of Tyler's most loved songs, and for good reason. It has that rawness that made Wolf such a charming album, but it's so clear that he's projecting here. The song is a complete rant, just Tyler laying into a father that will never hear him, sarcastically thanking him for not being in his life, and yet it's so clear that he just hasn't gotten over it in the slightest. And nobody would blame Tyler for holding resentment in his heart about that. It's something I'm sure most people never get over. But it's his constant attempts to convince us that he doesn't care that he reveals his greatest insecurity, that it's all he thinks about. And that self-awareness is why Answer is incredible. But now we have this track, an acknowledgement of being haunted. The song opens with Tyler's mom talking about how much he reminds her of him and how he had so many great qualities that Tyler now has. It sounds like an attempt to encourage, but in light of everything that's happened throughout the track list, it's just the worst insult that could possibly be thrown at him. There's a lot of unspoken growth here. It's been a while since Tyler's talked about his dad, and like I said, it was always aimed right at him, with resentment and hatred. But Tyler's trying to conquer that insecurity. And to conquer the insecurity that looms large right now, he has to admit that he's powerless to change how he grew up. And he does. He's accepted his dad's failure, wrestled with it, grappled with the pain, and he's chosen not to bark his anger into the void, but to try and be better. And still, that's where the song becomes so heartbreaking. His mom's efforts to show him how great his dad really was have just revealed to Tyler that he's bound to repeat history, to do the same thing that scarred him for life. He's deathly afraid that he's destined to abandon a child. The track's true meaning only makes sense in context with all of this history on its back. Tyler finally stopped being so angry about it, but his efforts to try and be a better man, to do something different, are falling flat in his facades. His love of money, his chasing of the Grammys, his inability to connect with others around him. And now he might be in the same situation as his dad, getting himself into things he's not ready for and running away from the consequences. And yet the song ends with someone taking accountability, someone who's chosen to repair the broken cycle, who doesn't deserve the blame.
It was my fault, not yours, not his. It was my fault. I'm sorry. You know?
It's hard to conquer our demons. There's bumps on the road. Taking the mask off is so much more than just lifting a hand to the face and grabbing the plastic. But once we take that leap, once we decide to face the things haunting us the most head on, once we sing on a track even though we hate our voices, you get what I mean. The people that love us are there to catch us when we fall. Finally, we've made it to the other side of this horrible leap of faith. We're skydiving now, and sure, there's still some fear in that, but we made the right choice and we can reveal ourselves to everybody and be proud of who we are. Balloon is about Tyler realizing he can embrace the true version of himself now, instead of the fake portrayal he put forth. The sample of I Wanna Rock by Luke constantly encourages Tyler to don't stop throughout the entire track, as he delivers this incredibly uplifting verse about how he's once again confident in who he is. The opening lines make the point that Tyler isn't interesting or cool because he has a lot of money. It's the person he is and how he impacts those around him. The entire thing is super tongue-in-cheek, talking about how he likes chasing the deeper things in life. But the line, forget them regrets, call them and get all that weight off your chest, is my favorite, because it's just such a victory lap. I mean, he's done it. He's taken that mask off. I don't know, maybe not fully, but he's at least committed to the bit. This album was never about Saint Chroma or Tyler's mom or even his dad. It was about him and a discovery of self. And he's done it. Why did he work hard? His soul profited. And now he can find his way home. The ending message of the album is simple. Where years ago Tyler was profoundly flamboyant, lost, searching for every experience he could have, now he seeks the opposite. Whereas before he wanted us to call him when we got lost, now he wants us to find our way home, because that's what he's seeking for himself. Tyler delivers one incredible verse over lush piano embellishments, wrapping up the album's conflict. He wasn't ready to have a kid and settle down and do what he knew deep down he should have been ready for, because he had this mask on. He didn't have a way home. The song loops around to almost everything we've discussed so far. The pregnancy scare, Tyler's insecurity, his need to be individual, his shortcomings, and yet it's a much more confident, self-aware, and most importantly, comfortable take on all of these issues. He comes clean about all of it instead of skirting around the issues. Yeah, sure, we might not be ready for these responsibilities. Sure, sometimes we're selfish. We may have everything in our life wrong, but that's okay. He's recognized that all of these parts of him, even if not perfect, make him who he is. And he's proud of who he is. Now that he's showing everyone the true version of himself, he doesn't have to be lost. He can find his way home, and he wants us to try and do the same. So we're done now, and I'm not sure what the album title means. I could spend time reading to you all the theories I've heard, but frankly, this video is already too long and I'm sure someone will do a better job than me researching it. I just hope that through this album, Tyler can inspire us to finally take our masks off. We all wear our own mask. It can be of anything. I think for me, it's so often being the kind of person that knows things or is confident I'm doing the right stuff with my life or thinks I have the answers. Yet, frankly, the more I lean into it, the more I'm humbled by realizing I have very little worth giving. And that's okay. I actually think this YouTube channel has helped me deal with my masks. It's created a space where I'm honest with people about how I'm falling short and artists are inspiring me to do better. And at the end of the day, that's the best thing art can do, no? It doesn't have value because it's some genius character or story that we have to figure out. It's not worth listening to because it makes us cool. Art is worth chasing every day because it relates us to people who struggle with the same things as us. And even if they don't have answers, we sit together in that struggle while we consume what they've made, and the universe connects us. I know we so often feel alienated from others, like they don't see us for who we are, and even if they did, they'd leave us in the dust because the version of us that they're convinced is the real one is much better than what's hidden. But I'm telling you, that's not true. And only through vulnerability can we experience real, honest, authentic life. I hope that you take your mask off. We can put it off until tomorrow, but consequences loom. And we got to find our way home, and while it's still the right time, and if someone as crazy as Tyler can do it, or at least try to, I think I can too.